Ողջույն։ Բուն զրույցի շրջանակներում այսօր խոսելու ենք միջազգային արբիտրաժի մասին։ Իմ հյուրն է Արբիտրաժի եւ հաշտարարության հայաստանյան կենտրոնի արբիտրաժային խորհրդի նախագահ, անկախ արբիտր Նյու Յորքից Գրանտ Հանեսսյանը։ Good morning, Mr. Հանեսյան. Thank you for being with us. It's a huge honor to host you in Armenia and at this stage to have this amazing conversation with you. First of all, I would love to ask you how the life brought you back to Armenia and you agreed to become the first chair of Arbitration Council of AMCA.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here with you in the studio, but also, of course, in Yerevan generally. Three of my grandparents were born in Western Armenia near Adana. My mother's mother was English, so she didn't speak Armenian, and my mother didn't speak Armenian, therefore I don't speak Armenian, which is a great shame. But my father's mother lived very close to us when my grandfather died, and she subscribed to Armenian newspapers and cooked the Armenian food, and I grew up with that culture in Florida, where I grew up. There was not a real Armenian community. My mother's father had a Armenian rug and furniture business, Mangorians, and there were some Armenians working there, and that was the Armenian community where I grew up. And it's a great privilege to be helping with the foundation of AMCA and this successful first year. As a lawyer, I began working with the government of Armenia in some investment treaty arbitrations several years ago, and began coming back to Armenia some and getting to know the people in the government, and now, of course, you and the other AMCA people, and it's really a great privilege to be able to help.
It is absolutely amazing that our ethnic Armenians living all over the globe and having amazing careers in different areas can come back and assist the country. It's a huge contribution to professional development of the state, because we get stronger living here when we know that the state is getting power in any professional area. So thank you very much for donating your time. I know it's already second time this year you're traveling from New York to Yerevan, having amazing series of trainings for universities, and we are going to have some more events with you.
Can I just tell you one thing? The first time I came to Armenia was 15 years ago for an arbitration program, small program sponsored by the World Bank and the British Institute of Comparative Law. And when I came through immigration at the airport, the fellow looked at my passport, he looked at my name, it's Grantt Hanessyane. He says, "Welcome home."
Wow.
I always feel that way when I come back.
Amazing. I would also love to talk about your career journey, how you decided to join arbitration or to let arbitration culture to replace traditional litigations. I know that you have huge career paths behind your shoulders.
So there were no lawyers in my family. My understanding of what lawyers did was what I would watch on TV when I was a boy, right? So on television, you watch lawyers in courtrooms doing litigation. And so when I went to law school, I thought, I go to a courtroom, I'll be a lawyer who does court cases. And I like the competition of disputes. I did athletic things as a boy, and I like winning and competing. But I also liked international law, right, intellectually. So when I got a job after law school at an international law firm, the first cases I worked on were at the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal, right? So this goes back a long time, into the 1980s, late 1980s, when I started work. And after the Iranian Revolution, there was the Iranian took the American hostages, of course, and the United States froze all the Iranian assets in the United States. And then this arbitration tribunal was created to resolve the claims between Iran and the United States. The hostages were released. Most of the money went back to Iran, but $1 billion was set aside to resolve claims by American companies and nationals against Iran. And then Iran had claims for money against the United States. The Iran tribunal still exists. It's in The Hague. But I tried, I think, about a dozen cases as a junior lawyer. So this combined my interest in dispute work with my interest in international law. The Iran tribunal was set up in 1981. It used the UNCITRAL, these UN rules, which are now being used in ad hoc cases for the first time. These were used at the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal. So my first real exposure to this work was actually, with Iran, which of course is a neighbor of Armenia, and we had an Iranian representative at our conference yesterday who I had a nice talk with. But at its core, arbitration is a friendlier way to resolve disputes than going to court. It's less formal, it can be much more efficient, and better for relationships ongoing than sometimes a dispute in court.
For already a year, you are collaborating with our younger generation lawyers here in Armenia. And what is your feeling whether we have a future of establishing arbitration culture? Mm-hmm. I believe it's about changing the legal culture, mindsets of lawyers. It takes time, I understand, but what is your feeling? What are the main challenges?
Yeah, after the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal work, I did a lot of work in Latin America, doing international arbitration in Latin America. And when I first began to go to Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and Venezuela to do these cases, the situation was actually very similar to what it is in Armenia now. There were concerns about court proceedings taking too long and formalistic and not good for international cases because it's a little too, we would say, parochial, too close to home. So the foreign companies weren't comfortable in the local courts. And there was a lot of training that had to be done, training of the lawyers, training of the judges so they could be comfortable with it. And now these countries are huge arbitration markets, right? Brazil and Mexico are I think, 5th and 6th in number of international arbitration cases. Why? Because it takes 10 years for a court case in Brazil, right? An arbitration can be over as quickly as the parties want it to be. If they want it to be over in a couple of months, it will be, So the flexibility, the ability to have your own arbitrator, you can make your own decision about who you want to decide your case, and a lower cost. These are all, and then it's also, it's private, it's confidential, it's behind closed doors. There's a transparency in the process. You can choose your arbitrator, but you can maintain your relationship with your counterparty, with your adversary, because you're not sort of screaming at each other in an open court, So it gives the benefit of being able to resolve your disputes in a way that is effective, can be much cheaper, and can be kind of friendlier, if I can say that.
When we started the journey, the main issue that we had, because we also conducted a public opinion survey, and it appeared that the public and even professionals are not aware of the institution. And once they were not aware, there is even no word about trust. Mm-hmm. And the main issue was a lack of trust towards who is gonna be the judge, right. Who should be an arbitrator. If we can illustrate mm-hmm. Who is an arbitrator and what kind of person he should be.
Yeah. Well, in all cultures, really, in all societies, you have people who are trusted. Sometimes they're the more senior people, but not always, who are trusted to make decisions that are in the interest of the greater community. I'll tell you a story about choosing an arbitrator once in Mexico. Right, we had a client. very much wanted somebody experienced in oil and gas to do this international arbitration that we were doing, and somebody familiar with Latin America. So we were looking at arbitrators in Mexico. And the arbitrator that we finally decided to use had almost no international arbitration experience, but had been the former head of the Mexican Lawyer Bar Association, right? And was particularly a lawyer that other lawyers went to when they had problems with their own law firms. You know, lawyers splitting off, taking business, you have a dispute in the firm, like, you know, how are we going to decide who keeps what business? You know, they would go to this person to resolve their dispute. Why did they go to this person? Because they all liked him and they trusted him, right? So I heard these stories, I met him, my client met him, we liked him very much. And now he's one of the principal international arbitrators. But that was his first case. But I knew that he would be perfect for this because he had a very good judgment and a very good personality. You know, people wanted to work with him. And he was very smart, of course. You know, you have to do the work. You have to be a very good lawyer. But it's more than that. People have to be willing to trust you. And so for arbitration, I mean, people know, the lawyers in the community know who these people are. And they can go to them and ask them, look, you know, this is not something forever, but for this one case, will you be our arbitrator in this one case? We will agree that you can decide in this case.
And of course, following this conversation always comes a question, and what happens if the arbitrator is corrupt or not biased? Because people in our societies had this mentality and fearing of corruption, and it's something that scares them. And there are also very well-known international cases and procedures, but people are not aware of that. If you may tell us more about that.
Well, again, if you go to if you choose as arbitrators people who have a good reputation, and not just a reputation as a good lawyer, but also a reputation for integrity, right? Some people are just known to have a better integrity than other people. So you go to those people as your arbitrators. But if there is a problem in a case, it is always possible. First, you go to the institution. If you have an institutional arbitration, use the AMCA rules. You can challenge the arbitrator before AMCA. If the arbitrator is not showing independence and impartiality, you can make a challenge. If you have evidence, you make a challenge. You also, at the end of the process, have the courts, and the courts can set aside, vacate an award which involves fraud or corruption. This is Armenia has a very modern arbitration law. It's based on the UN model law. It's used by many, many countries. And it's a very good law, and it allows for recourse if there are these problems. But I can tell you in my career, in terms of the corruption within the tribunal, and I've been a couple of hundred international arbitrations, this has never been a problem. And why is that? Because we pick arbitrators that's their first quality. They have integrity. You know, we all understand this is a private process, and at the center of it is the independence, the impartiality, and the integrity. You can call them the 3 I's of the arbitrator.
Yeah, I always try to explain in a simple way, saying that each arbitrator builds his or her own career, and if there is even an allegation, even a thought of it, the career would be fully killed. So each person builds the trust and how he is even accepted and seen. So it's really very important to underline.
We have a famous investor in the United States, Warren Buffett, and he has a saying that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And it's something that in arbitration, you know, we're all very protective of the reputation that we've built over time.
Absolutely. You are also involved in trainings for arbitrators. It's one of the most important area that we want to work, because we want to create a strong community of local arbitrators who would be also able to handle international cases, because we share the same mission and we want to make AMCA an international hub. What is the best tip for younger generation of lawyers? Where to study? What resources to use for this reason?
Well, I sound like an old person now, but the internet has completely revolutionized the educational possibilities for international arbitration. When I was a student, there were a few books, and that was it. When I started at Baker McKenzie, my law firm in New York, doing these Iranian cases, Baker McKenzie had the third best international arbitration collection in New York after Columbia and New York universities. And other lawyers would borrow our books all the time, Now it's all on the internet, right? It's available, and a lot of it is free, frankly. And so there are educational possibilities open to students now that didn't exist. The other thing is the Vis Moot court competition, which is now, I think, almost 30 years or so. I think it's about 30 years old in Vienna and in Hong Kong. I know many Armenian students over the years have participated in this. I've supported Armenian students in this now for many years at Yerevan State University and the American University, and I know the French University also participates. This is an unbelievably helpful training vehicle because it's set up very much like an international arbitration. You do the written submissions, and then you have your oral arguments, and you're up against teams from all over the world. There are fantastic social opportunities to meet other young people doing the same thing. At Baker McKenzie, we used to go to Vienna and hire people who would participate. You take notes when you see a good student, and then you go find them afterwards. I take a lot of pleasure in doing these trainings with younger people.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned that you had over 200 international arbitration cases. I believe there are very outstanding ones. But if you can tell us one that was probably life-changing or the most important to you.
Okay, well, the most important, actually, was the last one I did, I would say, because I was representing the government of Armenia in a case brought by a UAE entity called Rassia, which had a contract to build a railway from Iran to Georgia and a high-speed highway, and it was brought in ICSID, part of the World Bank. It was an investment banking case, and there was also concession agreements that also provided for ICSID rules. The case took 5 years. The claimants sought more than $300 million, which in Armenia is a tremendous amount of money. We had the hearings during the pandemic, so it was all virtual. I cross-examined the principal of the claimant for 5 days, and of course, I have happy memories because we won the case, which made everybody happy. But that was very meaningful for me because I got to know people here in Armenia. I came and talked to the witnesses, talked to the government people that I was working with. I was really inspired by the group working within the government who were extremely dedicated to the rule of law and pursuing these cases through legal means to their end, and getting the right outcome, which I felt we had in that case. So if I have to pick one case, it's certainly sitting here in Yerevan, that's the case I pick.
The case was well known in Armenia, because everybody knew about that case, but nobody knew that you were represented it. Oh, amazing. Thank you for that amazing job done. And in this context, I would love to ask you, where do you see AMCA in 3-5 years? We are starting with almost 0 point, building a lot of education, awareness raising. Where should we go and where should we be in 5 years?
Yeah, the consciousness is clearly developing. People, the work of the first year really is to get out and talk about it and talk about the advantages, principally for businesses, both business to business in Armenia, but also with investors, inbound investors and outbound investors. And I think a tremendous amount of consciousness has been raised. AMCA's been very good about doing things like this, but also social events and going out into the community, the different businesses, and talking to them about the advantages. A couple of cases have come in, but I think there'll be many, many more cases. The way this works it's a kind of little by little and then all at once, I know Armenia now has a thriving wine industry. When you plant grapes, you get nothing for 3 years. You can't use the grapes for 3 years. So you could say, okay, after 3 years I have nothing, but then the 4th year now you have wine, right? So patience is really required. Sticking with it, continuing to talk about the advantages of the process, and making sure that the lawyers who are advising businesses and investors understand that this will work. You have an extremely capable arbitration council, which I'm really very honored to chair now. But we have some really brilliant international people helping with this, with a lot of experience at the absolute best institutions, former Secretary General of the ICC Court of Arbitration. We have, I think, 4 people who've been on the ICC Court, including, I was a U.S. member of the ICC Court in Paris for 6 years from the United States. So you've got, absolutely top of class people involved. And I think that, the businesses and people will understand that this is the arbitrators that they'll get. There will be people that all of us think are reliable and will do the best job. This is, I wouldn't have gotten involved in this if I didn't think that this was a project of the highest integrity and intended to execute its work with the highest integrity. So I think as people begin to realize that this option exists for them to resolve their disputes in a private way, in a less expensive way, in a quick way, and in a way that allow them to continue to do business with their counterparties. This is arbitration is not the end of the line between the two parties. It's just a way to resolve a dispute so they can get on with their work. The courts are not really set up that way. It's more like a battle to the finish. So once people begin to see some of these work, then you'll have the 3 years and you'll have the wine, and it'll begin to sell itself.
Thank you very much for the trust, because it makes a bigger obligation on us to work better and perform better. And AMCA does also a lot of job to become an international hub, taking into consideration the location, geographic location, and mentality, prices, how accessible it is. No need to receive visas. You can receive a visa at the airport from many countries. We have no problems with receiving bank transactions from any country, which also makes it to be very attractive as an international hub. And what we need is to be loud of these privileges and to talk about it. And one of the ways probably is hosting international conferences where you can bring in different experienced people and discuss who we are and what we can share to the world. Of course, they bring in their experience and teach us, but we also open the market for them. And one of these amazing conferences was hosted here recently, and we were honored to be to have an amazing keynote speaker like you at the conference. What was your feeling about the conference?
Yeah, it was really. Well, as I said in my talk yesterday, when I came to Armenia 15 years ago, I gave a talk about arbitration. And there were maybe a dozen people in the room at the old Tulip Hotel. So I don't know how many people we
200.
had. We had a huge room, at the Marriott, the big Tigran room, and some, really excellent speakers. I go to a lot of conferences, and this conference was as good as any, frankly, in terms of the quality of the presentations and the quality of the people that were there. I was really extremely pleased. And I think, what you've said about Armenia being, an appropriate place to host international cases is all true. I think, in my view, that Armenia has a reputation now as a country dedicated to the rule of law. There is a lot of transparency here. given its geopolitical situation. There will be case. We have a Russian case now. We have an Iranian case now. There will be. Armenia has a tech reputation, of course. There's so many young people involved in tech here in Armenia. It's really a natural hub for a lot of the convergence, of people, working in the Gulf, working in the other CIS countries, to resolve their disputes here. So once this gets going and people see that this can be done efficiently and fairly, I think it will take off.
And to wrap up, what would be your advice? Where to look and how to move forward to make arbitration really boosted here in Armenia?
Well, I think you just do what you're doing. Just continue to outreach, continue to talk about how arbitration can be better than litigation for certain kinds of cases, certain kinds of clients. And mediation, I haven't talked at all about mediation, but mediation is even more efficient than arbitration for the right case. We have a huge mediation culture now in the United States. It's extremely effective in resolving certain kinds of disputes. Lawyers have to get used to the idea because, litigation lawyers, they sometimes say, I don't have clients, I have disputes. Once I have a case, then okay, this will take care of my school bills for my children with this case. This will go on for years and I'm all set. I only need a case. The way to think about it is, no, you have a client. You have a client you need to serve. The client can be best served by just resolving this case through mediation very quickly or arbitration. Okay, maybe your fees are not as big, but you have a happy client. And this happy client tells its friends and neighbors and business associates, I have a lawyer who was actually interested in a quick and cheap result that was fine, so maybe you should think about this lawyer, and you get more clients, and it begins to sort of develop its own momentum. So this is a cultural thing, but I have seen these changes, particularly in Latin America, where there's now this vibrant arbitration mediation culture that absolutely didn't exist 25 years ago. So I'm very optimistic that you have a lot of the foundation for this to develop and to thrive.
I wish we can have another interview in a couple of years summarizing what we were dreaming about, and wow, we reached and overgone what we were dreaming about.
After 3 years, we can drink our wine. Yeah.
And enjoy the work. Thank you very much for this amazing conversation, for being here and sharing your insights, wishes and dreams regarding Armenia and AMCA. It's a huge value that we have human knowledge and assistance, which makes us stronger. Thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.